Perfect timing.
Oh, it says live. Hi, hello, welcome to Crew Chats. Today is November 18th, and we are talking about one of my favorite topics, attribution. If you've missed any of our previous episodes, you can check them out on YouTube or in the Marketo community, which is even better because you can comment on them, and we almost always respond to those. If you have any questions during this episode, please tweet to us with the hashtag CrewChats, which you can see in our lower thirds right here. Also, you can follow any of us on Twitter using our Twitter handles, which are also in our lower thirds. I'm Sydney. I'm the Marketing Operations Analyst at Frisia. And this week's fun fact is going to be everyone's favorite Thanksgiving dish in honor of the impending holiday. My favorite Thanksgiving dish is pineapple casserole, which sounds gross and looks gross, but is easily the most delicious part of Thanksgiving. It's basically just pineapples and shredded cheese and Ritz crackers. So 3 delicious things in one makes one super delicious thing. Jen, you want to go next?
Yeah, actually, that sounds really good. We do a pineapple casserole too, but it's a little bit different, but kind of the same thing. It's like with breadcrumbs. Good. So my favorite Thanksgiving dish is Thanksgiving. Basically taking all of the food on the table and putting it into a pile and then mixing it into a bowl of sadness and then like inhaling it. Like that's kind of what I do. It's good. It's good.
All right. That sounds delicious and not bad. And Jeff, you're up.
All right. I'm Jeff Krajewski. I'm the Marketing Automation Specialist at PR Newswire Decision Company. For my favorite Thanksgiving dish, I would have to say it's actually the leftovers. What I do is I take basically a little bit of everything, put it inside a roll, nice and warm, and eat it.
That sounds yummy. Dory?
So I'm Dory Viscagliosi, Marketing Operations, Senior Marketing Operations Manager. I don't know my own title, at Datto. And my favorite Thanksgiving food is stuffing. And I'm just going to make all y'all jealous a little bit. We do free lunch Fridays at work, and today's lunch was Thanksgiving dinner. So I've already had one of my 4 Thanksgiving dinners. So just
I'm mad jealous.
take that in.
We had Thanksgiving potluck in my office yesterday, and I don't want to brag, but I'm going to anyway. I won $15 for a 4-way second place tie in the dessert bake-off, so I'm kind of a big deal, you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely a big deal. Anyway, so moving right along into what we have come here to talk about today, program attribution. So the million-dollar question that all of us as marketers are constantly having to answer is, what's the ROI on the programs that we're running? As a marketer, it's kind of a daunting question. Unless you have proper program attribution set up in Marketo, then it's easy as pie. So today we're going to go over some of the ways that attribution can help you prove your value as a marketer and just show what value marketing brings to your organization's bottom line. So who wants to tell us just what attribution is in the simplest terms?
I'll take that. To put it simply, I'll say that attribution is being able to pinpoint which of your campaigns and programs had some kind of touch with a user in their journey with your company, whether they're successful or not. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to tie your closed won revenue back to what campaigns affected that. And from there, the ones that you didn't have as much success with, you can go back and optimize.
Or do more of what worked.
That works too.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's an easy way to say there's a lot of different metrics you can look at following a program. Depending on what type of program it is, you can say how many people visited a booth at our trade show or how many people opened an email. But in the end, we just want to know what's affecting the bottom line. So what are the things that we're doing as marketers that are actually moving the needle on opportunities in our company? So there's a couple of things before we can start pulling this really cool, robust reporting that we have to have in place in Marketo. Does anyone want to talk about those?
Sure. So the 2 main things that we really need to have in place are program costs and like the period for period costs and program success. So we've got the time frame of your program or the campaign that you ran, and that might be something that you're running monthly, so you'd want to update those dollar amounts on a monthly basis. It may have been a one-time event so that you could just have one single dollar amount. One kind of trick, you could call it, is if you don't know an amount, at least put $1 in, because you can always divide by $1, but you can't divide by 0. So Marketo will function a little bit better if you at least put $1 in. And then program success. So program success would be your different program statuses, and you assign success to one or multiples of your program statuses. So let's say the goal of your campaign is to get registrations, then that would be a success. But if the goal of your campaign was to get actual attendance, then you wouldn't just want registration to be the success metric. You'd want to ensure that you were gauging success of that program and your success status as the actual attendance.
And just another note is you can actually have more than one successful status. So engaging with your content might be one, whereas they actually filled out the form to get the content is another one. Versus there might be a particular checkbox or some field in the form that tells you that they're really ready to make that purchase or to have someone call them. So you might consider multiple successes within the stages.
Yeah, that's so true. And just depending on what type of program it is, like there are totally different things that would mean success. So for example, if you were throwing a live event, you know, someone coming to the event is a success, where if they're filling out a form to download some content, like there's no event for them to come to, obviously. So that's how the program channels in Marketo work to separate those, and you define program success for each different channel type that way. But all of that ties back to, so each program in Marketo that a leader contact achieves success in before their opportunity is created and before their deal is closed is then split evenly to the dollar value of their opportunity. Does anyone want to go into that a little bit more?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Sydney?
Yeah, so I guess we're just getting at, like, what's the difference between multi-touch attribution and what's first touch attribution?
Sure. So first touch attribution is which campaign was the first one that they interacted with. Essentially, it's how you got them, how you acquired them. Multi-touch is an attribution model where you would look at all of the campaigns that they interacted with over the life cycle. You know, that's always going to be evolving if you have an evergreen life cycle. But the nice thing about it is you can evaluate which pieces in the multi-touch attribution model that are really having the biggest and most profound effect overall, so that you can, again, take that, use those, optimize them, or, you know, put them in a more particularly featured spot on your site or within your recommended materials to the users. One other thing I want to mention is, and just one little tip and trick that you can use and take away here, is if it's particular downloads. One of the things that I've seen utilized is creating download date fields, where you're actually in admin, you create a new field. Also, you know, depending on the scalability of this and the size of your content library, you might want to consider certain things. But if you are able to put download date fields in there, you're able to actually create what's called the velocity to see how quickly someone's moving through your content. And therefore, you can, with the attribution, experiment and see how, if you can move the needle with that velocity.
That's cool. That's very interesting. Definitely a good different way to think about doing attribution too. So does anyone want to talk a little bit more about how Marketo decides how much of an opportunity's value to attribute to each program that someone was part of?
Sure. I mean, unless somebody else wants to.
Go, Dorian.
So basically, Marketo is going to split credit evenly. And one thing that you can't do is you can't give credit to anything that happened in the past. So it's going to be basically based on, like, once the opportunity is created, that's where you're looking. and you can't give more credit than what's earned. So like basically you've got 100% to dole out, and it's split evenly amongst that, and you really can't give anything more than the programs that somebody was a part of.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's definitely one of the trickier things to understand with attribution. So there's a lot of different examples in the Marketo product docs. Like, just the best way to get it, honestly, is just going through different exercises with just fake people and made up numbers. And enough times when you fill out the grid, you'll start to understand. But let's say that you have an opportunity that's worth $100,000, make it nice and even. And the person that's attached to the opportunity in your CRM is part of 2 programs before their opportunity is open. Let's say that they visit the booth at your trade show. That's the very first touch they ever received. The first time they've ever heard about your company is at this trade show. And then after the trade show, you add them to your nurture campaign and they engage with that. So now they have program success in both of those things. Then their opportunity is open for $100,000. So instead of each of those programs getting credit, $100,000 worth of credit, we're splitting the value of the opportunity evenly between those 2 programs. So we're saying that the trade show affected them $50,000 worth, and the nurture program affected them $50,000 worth, equal credit to those 2 programs. And that's for their multi-touch attribution, for their pipeline created. The first touch attribution will 100% go to the trade show program. That's all based on the acquisition program that they receive in Marketo. So since the first time they ever heard about your company, or at least first time Marketo's aware that they heard about your company, was at this trade show, when their acquisition program was set to that trade show, it got 100% of the first touch acquisition credit for that opportunity. Does anyone else have any cool examples?
Well, yeah, this is kind of, let's throw a wrench in that. What if there are multiple people associated with the opportunity?
I was going to bring that up too, because then the math gets a little insane at that point. Like, you should have a spreadsheet out and start like writing formulas at that point. Because it starts to get a little
and Marketo will just magically give you a number.
Exactly. Exactly. Marketo is magic.
Right. If everything was a $100,000 opportunity with 2 programs, then you wouldn't need Marketo. But that's almost never the case.
No,
you also bring in the whole, what if they're part of a program while their opportunity is open before it's closed? So then that goes into their revenue 1 multi-touch credit, but it's not part of their pipeline attribution multi-touch credit. Very tricky, very tricky.
And if you have multiple people on the opportunity, it's going to split between the people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have 2 people on the opportunity and one of them is part of 2 programs and one of them is part of 1 program, then what happens?
Split 3 ways.
Split 3 ways. It's hard to understand, but once you get it, you can't forget it.
Mm-hmm. It's worth studying for sure.
It is, for sure. It's the kind of reporting that executives love.
Yes. Yes. Everyone loves that stuff.
Basically like the Holy Grail, to get to that point where you can say, hey, these are the amounts of revenue that we're bringing in from each of these types of programs. And you could, you can analyze, you can say this channel is bringing in this much, this channel is bringing in this much, and you can then have a baseline performance for what your channel should, what kind of success your channel should have. So let's say you go to a trade show and it does way worse than the average, hey, maybe that's not the best trade show for us to be attending. Or if you go to a different trade show and it does a lot better than your average, hey, maybe we should try to, identify what was unique about this trade show and how can we capitalize on this and maybe do more like this going forward. Or, how can we go to more events that are similar to this, or what about this made this the most successful, basically?
Yeah, events is an interesting thing because it actually, there's always a lot of money invested there. Same thing with a lot of paid channels, so paid advertising or pay-per-click. Those are a lot of the areas where big investments are being made that you really want to start attributing the actual values that you're pumping into those channels and those sources so that you can find out of the back end what the ROI is.
Yeah, this is the type of stuff that, like, if you were like me, I was a director of marketing in a previous life. So this is the type of stuff where when your CFO calls you into his office to plan your budget for next year and they try to start taking stuff away from you, you can actually pull up some numbers and say why that would be an unintelligent move. So yeah, it kind of covers your butt as a marketer in a lot of ways. So it's definitely worth knowing.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of, like, to your point about sharing this reporting with other executives and stuff, a lot of people, different companies I've worked at, have asked, well, so what should I care about, first touch or multi-touch? Like, which one of these numbers should I be looking at? And the correct answer is both. They just tell you different things. So first touch tells you which of my programs are good at acquiring people that end up becoming customers. So like maybe you have a lot of programs that acquire a lot of names, but if none of them ever move to opportunity, they weren't really that good of names. Like maybe they weren't qualified, maybe they just weren't the kind of people that you typically do business with. But if you have a program that acquires fewer names, but all of them are great and they all move to opportunity, that's better than a program that acquired more names, but they didn't really do anything. Multi-touch is great at telling you what programs move the needle along the way. So, you know, someone was affected by these different programs and ultimately decided to do business with us. Those programs say something good about what we're doing as a company and why someone would want to invest in us.
Just another thing about my point earlier with the download dates. It's a way to doing this if you don't have certain parts of Marketo like RCE or certain analytics packages. Another thing that it does allow you to do is it allows you to see the specific order that they've touched your content in, so that if they're interacting, downloading, you know, whatever your success timestamp is or date stamp, you're able to see that again and see what order it flowed through. You might find that something that you thought was more of a late stage game changer is actually something they're interacting with first, and I've seen that on several occasions.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's definitely worth looking at. Something else I think is important to note, I don't remember if it was Dory or Jen that was talking about the you can't give credit to something that happened in the past. So I find a lot of times, particularly with things that depend on a list upload, like a trade show, for example, if someone has a really hot demo in the booth at a show and your sales rep just opens an opportunity right there, if you wait till they get back from the show to load the list in, the trade show might not get credit for the opportunity because the opportunity happened in the past from when you gave them success in the program. So there is one little trick that I will share with you that I've used many a time to correct my own mistakes in Marketo. When you're loading a list and running it through a smart campaign to, change the program status, sync it to Salesforce, all the different things you need to do, you can also change their program success date to have happened in the past. Now, you should not do this to falsely inflate your numbers. That's not very honest. But whenever I load in a list for a trade show, I'm usually getting it a couple days after the show's ended. It's probably even more days after they've done the demo if they were like the first day at the booth or something. So I always change the success date of people I'm loading in for a trade show to the first day of the show, just to account for any opportunities that may have happened between when they were there and when I got the list.
Good point. Because, another thing that you could have, and it might not, one thing that we kind of know that we've got as an issue internally is, let's say, same story, trade show, maybe a demo doesn't happen in the booth, but let's say somebody then goes back to their office or their hotel room and they fill out a contact us form. So now we've given all of our credit to the website and zero to the trade show. So, that ends up being a big thing as well.
Yes, yeah. So the program success date, you can't give credit to things that happened in the past. So it's really important to make sure that you're on top of when your program success actually happened and making sure that it's logged correctly in Marketo. And the same thing with acquisition programs. Acquisition programs can be kind of tricky. If you load someone into a list that's part of a local asset in a program, I think their acquisition program is assigned automatically. But to be totally honest, I always manually assign the acquisition program in my flow step because I do not want to miss it. And sometimes weird things happen. Like, for example, I load all of my lists straight into Salesforce because reasons. And so their acquisition program always gets set as our just CRM-generated lead. So I have to manually override it every time. But that's so important if you want your programs to get first-touch attribution credit. And it's also easy to go back and correct if you forgot or realize something should have gotten credit where it didn't.
You can also change acquisition date, similarly to program success date.
Yep. And those are both like, go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, I was just going to say, going back a step to what Dory was talking about with the success progression in your channel setup, I think that's something that we just want to touch on a little bit more here, because it's really critical that as you're defining your channel strategy, a multi-channel approach is best. But when you're defining your channels, you got to think through. You can always change it later, and you can actually have statuses where someone can flip between if you have the same status value there. But in your status progression, you want to think through what are the actual steps, the logical steps, and build enough room or wiggle room that if there's additional things you didn't think of at first, you can go back and you can add them in. So, having your 10, 20, 30 as your progression might not be ideal. Building out a larger scale so that you have, maybe 10 as your first progression step. They visited this page. 20 is that maybe they interacted, and then 100 is ultimately maybe success, that they were a hand raiser, they checked that box that you needed, and you have the ability to have a little flexibility in there. You can change the progression steps values and add in other successful steps as you think through the strategy further.
Yeah, that's a great point. Can anyone talk about the attribution settings? If you set up an admin for RCA, the explicit, hybrid, or implicit, just dealing with contact roles and opportunities. Anyone really familiar with that?
It's a one-time thing, and so I feel like we don't ever think about it once you set it.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing that it controls how your whole attribution works. So I totally agree. Like, I set it up one time and I don't really think about it again. I think most people use either explicit or hybrid. I can't think of a great use case for using implicit. Maybe someone else can. But basically what it means is, do you want to attach people who are part of an account but did not have a role or an opportunity? Do you want to give them any multi-touch attribution credit in your modelers? And I mean, I can't think of an example where you would want to give everyone else credit. Explicit means you're giving only contacts with roles on the opportunity credit, multi-touch attribution credit. That's the default setting. Hybrid will only do contacts with roles if it's available, but if none are available, then it will use all contacts in the account. And I've seen that used before too. But implicit I've never seen used before. It's all contacts on an account regardless of their role.
Yeah, and Marketo, if you're listening to this chat, one thing we all probably are wondering is how attribution is going to tie in once people are adopting ABM.
Yeah, definitely. If everything's just going to go up to the account level, Marketo, we would love a response.
Yes, indeed.
Gaines, we know you're watching.
Hey, Gaines. All right. Does anyone have any final thoughts on attribution? Anything else to add?
It's not always easy, but you'll get there.
Start slow,
Yeah.
Crawl, walk, run.
Yeah. Well, so one other thing here that, Sydney and Joe are the two here that could speak to this, but there is a certification that Marketo offers.
There was a certification that Marketo offered, is probably more accurate. There was a revenue cycle analyst certification that you could test for. You have to already have the Marketo Certified Expert certification. Marketo recently decided to discontinue that certification, but it's because they're coming out with a new advanced analytics certification in 2017, from what I understand. So very excited to see what that's all about. I'm hoping it'll be rolled out at least by Summit. And I'm excited to see how it's different than the RCA test they had in the past. I think it'll be really good. There's definitely more of an emphasis at Marketo on analytics as the company's growing, so I'm excited to see what it looks like. But I think effective January 1st of 2017, you can no longer test for the RCA certification. So if that's something you really had your heart set on, you can still test for it, but you have to do it before December is over. That's it, guys. That's all I got. Anyone else? Attribution. What a fun topic. I love attribution.
No, I think that's it. I think that's pretty close to a wrap.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds great.
All right. Well, I'm Smugs/Sydney. So this has been Crew Chats. I'm gonna wait for Joe to turn off the live stream. But that's it. We like you guys.